Hello and welcome back to another special Staying Alive podcast. We're bringing this to you from down under Queensland, Australia today, as we're going to meet a very, very special guest on the podcast, and we look forward to learning more about her story. We're going to also let you know that now is a great time to hit a subscribe button, or a follow button, or a bell, wherever you're listening to this. Maybe you might want to just check out that scan code that appears on the screen about here, about now, so that way you can learn more about the Alive Advocacy Movement, or you can simply go to aliveadvocacymovement.com and learn more about what is behind the Staying Alive podcast. But without further ado, I think it's time to boogie on in and meet our very, very special guest for today. Please welcome Julie. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie.
Nice to meet you, a young vapor from the Gold Coast.
Oh, well, not quite young, but I love you. Thank you. But yes, I'm definitely a vapor from the Gold Coast.
Fantastic. So, how did you find a pathway onto vaping? Or because I've been told quite a lot by apparently public health authorities and authoritarians that apparently vaping is a gateway to smoking. Do you feel like smoking?
What, vaping is a gateway to smoking?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
hell
what.
no.
No.
Oh, no. There's no comparison between smoking a cigarette and vaping.
So, how long were you
Yeah,
smoking for before you discovered
oh,
vaping?
well, I can even. I'm originally from WA, and I remember this night I was out with my group, as we call it, 14 years old, and I had my first beer and my first cigarette. Still hate beer, never did turn into a raging alcoholic, and just, only smoked, when I was around my gal pals, when, mum was at work or we'd be hiding in the garden shed. So, it's just the usual teenage shenanigans. If we knew back then what we know now about smoking, we probably still would have tried it, but I think personally I wouldn't have continued with smoking. But yes, I remember that night very, very clearly. It was just it's teenagers want to try things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's part of being a teenager. That's how we learn what is, who we are, what we're going to become. It's all part of the development of the adult personality. And parents may not like it. I sure as heck wasn't happy when I found out one of my teenage children had dabbled with smoking, but unfortunately, you can't stop teenagers. But that started my smoking journey, at 14.
Okay.
Very, very casual smoker, Obviously, as I got older, especially once I got to that, yes, I can say that now, about the 17 years of age with the fake ID, which was so easy back then because everything was
Oh,
paper.
yeah.
Oh, yes. Um, you'd go into a smoke-filled pub and everyone was smoking, and of course that's when smoking really got its claws into me, and I became a daily smoker. It wasn't just around my gal pals. I was now a smoker. Um, and bit by bit over the years, you go from smoking maybe, 5 a day, 10 a day, and it does steadily increase until to the point when, 35 years onwards, I was an extremely heavy smoker. 35 to 40 at least a day of 16
Wow.
milligram
Okay.
cigarettes.
16 milligrams. So you're the hardcore.
They
Yeah,
are hard.
wow.
They are hardcore. They weren't
Absolutely.
menthol. They were tobacco flavored. And during stressful periods, I could almost chain smoke.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how bad you feel, but looking back now, I know how bad I felt. Now, just not going off topic, I'm a nurse. Now, my mum was a matron, and matron midwife had been nursing for 60 years. Again, we're talking about paper days when we could make her younger. Now, she smoked all her adult life, and she, in her mid 80s, got 3 different primary cancers. Now, 2 of them were smoking related and 1 wasn't. One was oral cancer. That was the very first one. Second one was bowel cancer, which had nothing to do with smoking. And the third one was esophageal cancer. Now they put her in remission for the first one, completely got rid of the second one. But the esophageal cancer was the one that did finally claim her life. But it wasn't quick. I can't say she had a horrible death. She didn't have a horrible death because she didn't have emphysema and everything like that. And I still smoked at that point. That was about.
But why would you? Why would you keep smoking? Like, you've got that. Surely you must have known that these cancers from your own mother.
Oh yes.
Would have been caused from her smoking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I knew every time. Why? Yeah, why
do you keep smoking?
That's what addiction is. That is exactly what addiction is. It's you're stressed out, your brain is screaming, give me that addicted product, which is, and also the habit of that.
Mouth, yeah.
And Mum said to me, she, as I said, she didn't have a horrific death. You would think with cancer she did, but she actually didn't. But she said, Doody, that was my nickname. She said, Doody, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say quit smoking. She said that would be unfair of me. She said, but if the day comes and you can quit, try. She said, I know you've tried before, but she said, try and quit so that you don't end up with the oral cancer and the esophageal cancer.
Right.
And I said, Mum, I won't promise because I've tried so many times, but I will, I will sort of try and honour that.
Mm-hmm.
So Mum passed away sort of late 80s. I continued to smoke. Now,
so this sort of must be carrying around with you for a long time then. Almost like a monkey on your back, thinking, well, I kind of made this maybe promise or, with your mum to try and fulfill. So when did you finally go, right, this is how I'm going to quit smoking?
Well, I remember it so very clearly. Mum had been dead for about 2 years. I was having my morning shower and I did that first ever cougher's hack where I had to cough and there was all this green gunk.
Yeah.
And that's when I went, hell no. I'm headed down the emphysema COPD road. I already knew, my chances of cancer were astronomically high, but strangely, it wasn't the cancer that scared me. It was if I developed emphysema or COPD, because they are very slow, agonizing, frightening deaths. People gasping for air for years before they finally die. So I had previously tried everything to quit. I had tried cold turkey so many times, it's a wonder I didn't get frostbite. I tried all the over-counter things. They were, look, I might as well have used Smarties. They were useless. Especially when you're on, 35 to 40, milligrams, 40, that they were just useless. Around that time, Champix was available. Tried Champix, no, completely failed. Tried hypnotherapy, acupuncture, went to psychologists. Absolutely nothing would work. I'd, I'd quit maybe. I think the longest I managed to quit was for about four weeks, and that was about it. Every time
Just
I'd go
on
back.
just white knuckling it on pure willpower, I'm guessing.
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess with smoking, some people would say, "Oh, well, you're weak willpower," and look, that could be true. I just think people are hardwired differently. Many years ago, I was 110 kilos, and I decided one day I'm not going to be 110 kilos anymore. I didn't go and get gastric bands or anything like that. I just decided to eat sensibly, lose weight. Took me a while, and I'm no longer 110 kilos. Um, so, maybe with smoking, I think some people, yeah, it's just got to do with the hard wiring and maybe past personal experiences. Some people, for whatever reason, enjoy the sensation of, inhaling, whether it's smoke or a
Hmm.
vape. And I think some people, it is a stress reliever. Smoking certainly was a stress reliever. Well, on that side of the brain, whereas that side of the brain was going, no, it's going to kill you. You know that. But
Hmm.
that the addiction side was saying, no, yeah, I need to be calm. I need to be under control. So, I tried all those different therapies, and uh, I knew nothing about vaping, but somebody mentioned it to me. And
Okay.
I said, what on earth is that? I must have been a mushroom. You know, so, I did a bit of research, and then I had a female doctor, and I didn't even know vapes were sold in Australia. So I don't know how. Oh, she was a New Zealander. That's right. So I went on New Zealand sites, and I went to my doctor, and I said, look, I've done all this research on vaping as a smoking cessation thing. What do you think? These are the ingredients in this liquid, and this is the device. I showed her pictures, and she was actually, very open-minded doctor, and she had seen me fail so many times. And she said, look, go with that one. The ingredients don't seem to be harmful. She said, just be careful of the amount of nicotine because, and so that's basically how I decided. So I got my first lot of a vape mod and e-juice, sent over from New Zealand.
Okay.
And it probably took me about 2 weeks. That for about 2 weeks I was a jewel, so that's a big hot
Right. So
potato.
when you felt like a cigarette, you would go and try the vape first, and then if you felt like a cigarette, you'd go to a cigarette then. Is that how you went? Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
that
pretty
only
much the normal way.
yeah, and that only went on for 2 weeks. And then I thought, why the heck am I paying, $35 or $40 for a packet of cigarettes when if I just persevere with this, I'm still getting my nicotine hit, and that was it. It took 2 weeks, and I was now um, no longer smoking, and have never smoked since. And I've been vaping for about 8 years now.
Wow, that's fantastic. And
Hmm.
never felt like a little sneaky cigarette maybe at a party or something like that, just to see what it's like. Yeah, oh
No,
look, I've
well,
spoken to some vapors who have had a sneaky cigarette at times and then gone, oh shit, really?
actually, I tell a fib. Had forgotten about this. There was
Yeah.
one occasion about rather embarrassing actually, about 3 years ago, and yes, I had been having a couple of drinks, and somebody had, oh, I don't know what they were, and my vape had gone flat, and I said, oh, can I buy a ciggy off you, please? And they said, oh no, you just have one. This is not a made up story. I had two inhales, and then passed out, fainted.
Oh, that was the end of your night. That was the end of the night. Wow, hey.
Because I was, it just I don't know why, but so I fainted. So of course I woke up to all these people around me going, "Are you okay?" Thinking I was, I'd been drinking heavily at that point. I think I'd had, 2 drinks, but it was actually
Really? Right.
it was actually inhaling the tobacco, and it must have just, yeah, I don't know, it must have taken all my oxygen away or something, and caused, major head spins, and I ended up fainting. And
Wow.
I'm not prone to syncope. Sorry, syncope is the medical term for fainting. So yes, that was a few years ago, and that was the only time I tried it. But I do remember the 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 first inhale, because the second one I was on my way out. It was kind of like, oh my God, I think if I went and licked a cane toad, it might taste better than this. It wasn't. It wasn't. There was, there was nothing pleasurable, and I just remember, I don't know, everything felt clogged up in there on one inhale, which is probably why I passed out after the second one.
Yeah, wow. That's I think the moral of the story to that is for anyone who is vaping and found this pathway of smoking who are listening or watching this, is to make sure you got a backup plan. Make sure you got a plan B. Don't get caught at the party. Make sure you got your spare batteries, or make sure you got the spare device that's charged, or whatever. And
I carry two. I carry
two,
two.
there's two generic, non-advertised branded mods, small pod mods. Yeah, on the
Oh
screen
yes,
there.
sorry. Oh yes, sorry. They. Yes, sorry. What about that?
No, that's all right. That's fine. We're not
Yeah,
advertising them or anything. It's
no,
just the principle of the matter.
it
So,
is.
and
Especially if you're in the early days of vaping, yeah, do exactly that. Make sure you have 2 or 3 with you, um, because especially in the early days, you may go back and just try that cigarette. I think most vapors will go back to their vaping even if they try a cigarette. But
mm,
I got my out of my 3 kids, my youngest, again, when I say youngest, she's a grown woman, she's a nurse. She was a smoker, nowhere near as heavy as myself, but she said, "So you're going to start vaping?" And she did the research, and she went, "Oh, yeah, I don't want to spend all this money on tobacco either." So she's a vapor as well now, and she's been vaping about the same amount of time as myself.
right.
And she did try a cigarette about a year ago, and she said, "Mum, I had 2 or 3 puffs," and she said it was just revolting. She said absolutely revolting. She said the flavor was awful. She said I felt terrible. Um, so it does seem that
Look, have you noticed any adverse effects since beginning vaping 8 years ago? Have you noticed? I don't know. Have you noticed any black gums, or have you noticed yourself turning into a popcorn machine
no,
or anything like
no,
that?
no. I quite the opposite. I had a chest X-ray that day. I went to see my doctor, as I mentioned, and my lungs were horrendous. They were black and horrible and whatever. Now, all these years onwards, my lungs, I still have a bit of residual damage from smoking, but my lungs are nice and white. No, all the alveoli, everything's functioning properly. Blood pressure's normal. Have my hair, have my teeth, have my eyesight. My frontal lobe still
Nice.
seems to be working. They haven't developed anything nasty. Even my skin person who I go to try and keep my skin nice is going, "Oh, every year your skin gets better." And I think it's because, again, I'm vaping, I'm not smoking. So no adverse effects. All positive effects. All that money I spent on smoking now goes on a yearly cruise, sometimes 2. I could barely walk upstairs when I was smoking. Now I run with my dogs.
Oh
You
wow.
know, yeah,
Nice.
yeah, I run. That if I'd tried to run when I was smoking all those cigarettes, again, I probably would have passed out. So, I
Yeah.
do not understand why people are so against,
Well,
proper
but maybe
vapes.
you're just a superhero in disguise. Maybe you are the one person in the world who can vape for 8 years and all of a sudden feel better. Or
I know, I know. I must be the only one because look how many people say, "Oh, this vaping is so bad for you." I just,
I say that
ugh,
totally tongue in cheek because, of course, we know
yeah,
that there are, well, at least 80 million,
millions.
if not over 100 million people across the world who have just managed to quit smoking with vaping and find a pathway off with this method without having debilitating symptoms as what seems to be broadcast and perpetuated by a lot of public health authorities and more importantly, they're NGOs or they're non-government organisations that happen to give a lot of money and grants and lots more of our taxes as they perpetuate myths, etc. But look, it takes me to the next point I really want to approach with you,
Hmm,
Shirley, is look, by the sounds of it, you and the friend you spoke about before
hmm.
didn't seem to need, you didn't mention a doctor or a prescription or anything like that being required to make this decision to start vaping and to quit smoking.
No,
Wow.
I didn't need
But
anything
but
like that.
but a health
And
minister seems to think that's what smokers need to quit smoking. Now,
no, they
now
just need proper vape stores with knowledgeable people who know which vape is the best vape for a new vapor.
now what is you say the term proper vape store, so I'm going to sort of challenge you a little bit here. Is
Hmm,
look, there's pop-up tobacconists crawling all over the Queensland, southeast Queensland right now, more than we've seen ever in the history of tobacconists um, ever. Retailer retail explosion, literally almost in some situations. So
it's become very explosive.
are you talking about those type of shops where you're saying that that's the sort of vape shops you should get vapes from, or
Pretty much how
or
it how it was, minus no offense to tobacconists because I hate what's happening to them, but vape shops that over 18s only can enter, and they're the only ones who can sell, you know, vape mods, vape pods, vape juice. And look, there can still be some government regulations in the sense of they must be 18 plus, they must come, they can't contain certain chemicals, some of the earlier chemicals, but people to have the choice to walk into a actual vape store must show ID. And if you're youthful like me and you need ID to prove you're over 18, before they hand anything over,
But
and
what do we
they're the
what do we
they're
what do we do now? I'm sorry to interrupt, but what do we do now? They're all gone. They're all gone. Mark Butler's thrown them in the bin, thrown them in the can, conflated them with these other tobacconists that sell illicit vapes. Or the law-abiding vape specialist stores, by the sounds of it that you speak of, Julie, they're gone. They've
they're gone.
been they've been legislated out of the picture. And how does that make you feel? I mean, how do we cope? So I see you've got a couple of devices there that maybe unnecessarily prescription chemist based devices. Have you investigated going down that path?
Oh, I won't use those ridiculous pharmacy ones. Absolutely not. Just before the new laws came in, I made sure that I had a backup supply of the particular mods that I like. Um, the ones that the pharmacies prescribe are are ridiculous. I mean, you've got a choice of one, sometimes two. Um, and you have to actually, you don't refill them yourself. You have to buy pods each time from the pharmacy. even though the October 1st S3, S4, don't need a prescription for under 20 milligrams, most pharmacists are either they don't want to supply them, or if they do, they still want a prescription because they're concerned about the legalities of them supplying vapes.
What a
And
dud situation. What a
and the
dud
only thing I
situation.
just want to add is
Yeah.
pharmacists are so overworked. Yeah, they really are. I'm in the health industry. They don't need this. This is not their responsibility. Their responsibility is to help people to come in who are after medications for their heart conditions, their arthritis, their colds, you know, not to supply you know, vape units and whatever. They just don't have the time for it, and they don't want to do it, and they also don't have the education. I mean, you know, they're not interested. It might that doesn't necessarily mean they're anti-vapes, but it means they're anti-selling them because they don't have time for it. They don't believe it's their responsibility to sell vapes, and I don't. I don't either. I don't think pharmacists should have anything to do with this. Let them deal with proper healthcare issues, not supplying a vape.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Mm,
certainly proven over the recent months to be a dud deal for vapors made by our federal government with the Greens and One Nation. I won't forget about you, Malcolm. Um,
mm,
that vapors have been told that they'll be able to go to a chemist and get what they want to keep them off the smokes with the vapes, but none of the chemists want them, as you say there. And even if I won't say none, but look, look, a little birdie in my ear says roughly about 1 in 10 are
mm,
participating. Only about 1 in 10 at best are participating, and that's not just to the Gold Coast or Southeast Queensland. That's in a nationwide study that will be released soon as we
mm.
can, which is really kind of interesting because it also says a lot that there has been a lack of choice of options available. So, with that said, I mean, some people can be luckier than others, but did you find that over your journey of quitting smoking with vaping, that the very first vape device was perfect for you? Or have you evolved over time and found different devices and different flavors and situations with your
I
setup
it,
that work
it was a
better?
little bit odd because as I said, I was a straight tobacco smoker.
Yes.
So the two juices I originally ordered was tobacco flavored, and the other
Okay.
one was menthol. Only because my daughter, who I said, decided, oh well, I'm going to do this, so I got her menthol. Well, I didn't like the tobacco flavor, so I used the menthol one, and I have actually, I still use menthol all these years later. Um, Sometimes I've had to experiment a little bit with the different brands that were once available to get the right menthol for myself. Some
Yeah.
menthols are just, it's like when you buy, you know, those I can't think of the name of those mints, but there's a white mint that you can buy. It's like a
Oh,
lolly.
the triple X, the triple X
Yes.
mint. That's
Oh,
the one.
yes.
They're the best mints out. Yes.
Yeah, but they blow off your head. Whereas you can go and get a Mentos, which is just a milder mint,
Yeah.
or menthol if you like. And I just so I had to experiment a little bit with the types of menthol, and then finally I found my menthol and happily vaped that for years until the government intervened, and so now I've had to thankfully, as I said, I did order in a lot of stock before it became, I'm going to say the word illegal, to do it unless you go black market. And so my taste buds have had to adjust to the new menthol, but I've got there. And the choice was to go back to smoking, and that was never and will never happen. I'll vape.
What do you think about adults enjoying stuff like wild strawberry and watermelon and banana caramel, vanilla
Look,
cheesecake, this type of thing, as far as that goes in a vape? Do you think that that helps, or what are your thoughts on that? As someone who has managed to just go, yeah, it's all right, menthol's fine with me.
yeah. And I, again, it all comes down to personal choice and your taste buds. I mean, I myself am not into the dessert flavors, but then saying that, I also don't eat desserts very often, except at Christmas time,
Mm.
of course. Um, and if they like caramel or all these other, dessert flavors, good on them. That's their choice. That's what they enjoy. And if that's what they enjoy, they're not hurting anyone. They're not hurting themselves. They're they're doing what they have, you know, the the Freedom Act says to do, which is they're making a choice for themselves. So yeah, have the exotic flavors. I don't think that keeps them any more hooked to vaping than myself vaping menthol. It's just personal choice. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I think that's a good point that you do bring up.
mm,
Because predominantly this whole issue is about personal choice. And right now, personal choices and our freedoms seem to be under attack more in Australia than at least I've ever seen in history of Australia. Do you agree with that? That's where we're at? Is that what your experience is as well, Julie? I don't want to put any words in your mouth. What's your
no,
thoughts on that?
look, this is not the Australia I grew up in. This is not the Australia that my mum and dad were alive in. Um, I'm very discouraged by Australia at the moment. I feel repressed. I feel like vapors are being repressed, vilified, bullied. We're being made out to be, I don't know what they're making us out to be, but it certainly isn't decent human beings. Um, some of the comments that you read, on social media, which I won't go into, they're very, very nasty. And the way, people, that some of the government act, it's like we're lepers and that we're going to infect the planet, because we have chosen to quit tobacco and vape instead. It's quite the opposite. We're not infecting the planet. If anything, by vaping, we're actually helping the planet because we're not setting all those toxic chemicals from the cigarette smoke out into the atmosphere.
Oh, and not,
So,
not to mention the cigarette butts going into our marine life and then through our creeks and riverbeds, you know?
and they are back. For many years, I was so happy not to see the cigarette butts everywhere, especially at the dog park, which, I used to actually, this was before I started vaping, I actually used to go around with a stick getting the cigarette butts because I was worried about the dogs and the environment. And then when vaping was at its, when vaping really got in, the amount of cigarette butts really reduced, not just at dog parks, but everywhere. And now the cigarette butts are back,
Right, so
you know,
you're healthy by quitting smoking with vaping, you're able to take the dog for a run down the park, and then all of a sudden you've been stigmatized by the government and all the rest of it, and then you're looking down around you as you're taking the dog for a run and thinking, bloody hell, there hasn't been cigarette butts here for years. They're
no,
back.
yeah, that's right. They're back. And the cigarette
Wow.
packets, the empty cigarette packets are back, you
I've
know.
got a, I've got a fair hint why. Is look, Roy Morgan Research recently put out some data that shows that the amount of vapors in Australia have diminished by 300,000. So basically gone from about 1.8 million to about 1.5 million in the last 12 months. And unfortunately, there wasn't done the extra bit of the survey to say exactly how many of those vapors have gone back to smoking. But it sounds like from what you're saying, with your anecdote, And what I'm seeing and what I'm being told, because I'm speaking to people right across Australia every day regarding these issues, is that smoking is definitely back.
Oh, it's back. It, it's I do a lot of driving, because besides the hospital, I also do community nursing. And, just a short while ago, you'd see people, you'd see the vape cloud, coming out of the car. Sometimes I'll just do it on here, like
Yeah, just a
that
little,
sort of thing.
yeah.
But now what I'm seeing is the hand hanging out the
Oh,
window
yeah.
with the cigarette butt and the flicking of the cigarette butt. So again, it's only a matter of time before bushfires and things like that. And again, I think about the environment, um, and that's really discouraging because it's kind of like, wow, once that was the old Australia with all the smoking, then we got smart and got on vaping, and now it's like the government has they've made vaping the enemy where they've targeted the wrong product.
Look, to be fair, I think to Australians' credit is that the government have never really been fair on vaping and really given it a chance to be regulated properly, as you explained. That you thought that that's probably the way that should happen earlier there, Julie, which is really quite sensible in my opinion. They've never really given it a chance, and I think that we could have fully avoided this situation we're in. But look, it's not about what I think. What do you think from just where you're sitting? Obviously, maybe a few years in a healthcare setting, so you've probably seen firsthand a lot of experiences. If you had a chance to just have Mark Butler's ear, because no doubt this will become his favourite podcast. If not, maybe
Mm.
some of his advisors
Yeah.
who might be listening, based on what your experience, as you've just spoken about here. If you had his ear, what would you say to him right now if you had a chance?
If if I could get him face to face, I would, and I don't mean this in a violent way. I would say to him, Mr. Butler, put a plastic bag over your head. Don't completely cut off your air supply. Now, you know, try and breathe like that for about 10 minutes and see how you feel. Because that's what it's like for emphysema patients and COPD patients who have smoked for years and years. And then that would be one thing I'd want him to actually trial, because unless you've actually seen these people struggle, the other thing I would say to him is, look, I'd make it basic. I could give him all the intellectual stuff. He's read it. He's disregarding it. I'm going to tell him something my more recent doctor told me when I asked him his opinion about smoking versus vaping. He said, right, Julie, imagine yourself, you're on a 15-story building. And imagine yourself standing on just one step of, before you go onto the pavement. He said, with as a smoker, you step off that building, certain death. He said, as a vapor, you step off that step. If you stumble, you might get a grazed knee, but you'll survive. He said, so if you've got to do some kind of inhalation, whether it's smoking or vaping, go vaping. You can't get any more basic and sensible than that. Because if all of the intellectual studies, all the studies that I'm sure this man must have read, or at least his people around him, if they're being disregarded, just use that common sense analogy. You're a smoker, you step off a 15-story building, you die. You're a vapor, you step off one step. If you have a little fall, you're going to be fine. Chances are you're not even going to get hurt. So, do we have to simplify it that much? Because it certainly seems like the science isn't working with Mr. Butler. And so that's what I'd say to him. I would repeat that to him and do the plastic, ask him to do the plastic bag himself. I'm not going to put a plastic bag on his head, but yeah, and just, and just, you know, try and just get some, down to earth, simplified information into him because none of the scientific stuff seems to be working with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Look, I think it's absolutely awesome advice. I don't know if it's going to protect the teens, the teen epidemic that he perpetuates that apparently exists. I'm not seeing it. All I'm seeing is mainly mature adults. And funny enough, in Redbridge surveys and lots more, that's the reality. Is what I'm seeing is that, and even at AIHW, is that it's mainly adults who are vaping, and that the little bit of short-term use from the teens experimenting with vaping rather than smoking. And as you said earlier, Julie, that near the start of this podcast, that yeah, your journey of smoking started with a little bit of experimentation at school.
And
Now,
just,
while I
sorry,
don't
just
condone teens to vape, hey, I'd rather fall off
I
one
don't
step
want,
than
oh,
than off the top story, as to say. Sorry, you wanted to say?
I actually just going back to when I first started and my little gal pal group, there was about 12 of us. Now, the interesting thing is, of the 12 of us, only about half of us continued on as smokers after the experimentation days. The others remain non-smokers. And as far as teenagers go, no, I don't want them to vape. I don't want them to smoke. I don't want them to drink alcohol. I don't want them to do drugs. But teenagers are going to find a way to do everything that they're not supposed to do. But just because they may have one or two puffs on a vape, the chances are they've had 3 or 4 or 10 or 12 puffs on a cigarette, plus numerous amounts of alcohol, and probably some other things we don't even want to mention. So I think vaping is, I said, I don't want teenagers vaping. I don't want children vaping, but I think kids are facing much bigger issues than experimenting with vapes. I think they need to have a look at children and teenagers in particular with binge drinking. Just look at the death rate. How many times do we hear of car accidents where it's underage kids in there and they're all paralytic drunk and they're dead
Oh,
or they've killed somebody else?
yeah, absolutely. Hey,
Mm.
I think this has been an awesome podcast. I've got to say,
Oh, you
I want to thank you so much for being so candid and giving us so much of yourself and your time with us today. And not only that, um, for me, to be able to help create change, to make a
oh,
difference, to be heard, those stories are so important. And to know that someone like yourself who was willing to do this for us today and for the listeners to be able to hear your story, um, so important as part of the Alive advocacy movement, because I think it's those that honesty, that integrity that you bring really helps. Um, I think can really help, at least to help hear our honesty and our stories be heard as they should be, and respected, and create that positive change. So thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. And, I've never been, except for patient advocacy, I've never been involved in anything like this before. So it just shows how strongly I feel about this. If someone had told me a year ago, you're going to do a podcast, I would have said, no, I'm not. Um, but I know vaping is a life changer for smokers. And, you know, I'm living proof of it. I know what my lungs look like. I saw the x-rays 8 years ago. I would have emphysema, COPD, and probably a few other nasties by now. And look, I may still get cancer, but I can't predict that, but it might not be a smoking related cancer. But I know I've greatly reduced my chances now of ever getting a smoking reducing cancer. And I want other people to have the opportunity, and I want other people to enjoy being able to feel air in their lungs again by
Abs-
not having to go back to cigarettes.
Great. Well said. Absolutely well said. Who doesn't want to spend another day, another hour, or another week, or potentially another year or years with a loved one? I think that at the baseline, of course, that is what it's all about. So thank you again for joining us. It's been a fantastic podcast. Um, and look, if you've just joined us for the first time and you want to catch more of the content, check us out here on wherever you're listening or watching this. Make sure you're subscribed. Feel welcome to comment. Please, we welcome your comments, your input, your feedback in whatever you want to see more of or less of. Please let us know how we're doing, and feel welcome to join. Be a part of it, whether you've got 5 minutes a week, 5 hours a week, 50 hours a week. No, don't be that crazy. But if you've got a little bit of time to contribute to a movement which is about helping save lives, to help educate others across Australia, so Australia can really be educated about vaping, and that's why it is called Alive. Not
Yes.
only because we can celebrate being alive, but Australia, let's improve vaping education. Let's make sure you follow all the links that pop on the screen now, the QR codes, etc. And hop over to aliveadvocacymovement.com and follow us on across all the social medias where we're at as well. Well, you know what it's time to do, and by the sounds of it during the chat today, Julie, you sound like a bit of a party gal. So we're going to do a little bit of
I
boogie.
was.
We're going to do a little. We're going to do a little bit of boogie on out of here for old time's sakes. Thanks for listening. Keep staying alive.
Staying alive, staying alive, staying alive, staying alive. Go vapors, come on. It's better to breathe and fill your lungs and fill it with tar. So stay alive.
We can try to understand New York Times.